Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday morning, a little after 10 a.m., and we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, See if we have any questions. I think on last week, the last time we talked, Sunday and Monday, uh, we were talking about the baptism of Jesus from the perspective of Matthew, I think it was, uh, and we were looking at what those verses meant when John baptized Jesus, and we're specifically looking at Mikvah, and we tied it into what happened to Naaman, uh, take a deeper look at the Jordan River, and Naaman being a leper, being baptized, being told by the prophet to go down and dip in the Jordan. So we looked at that and kind of gave that some understanding that we hope enlightens us on this journey that we're on at this time. But if there are any questions about that or the previous lesson in Luke or anything that may have come to your attention this week, please feel free.
Ron, this is Evelyn.
Hey,
I
Evelyn.
have something I would like to address. I be on YouTube a lot, and I saw something. One of the things I saw that was very disturbing was these people are worshiping this mechanical bull. I mean, it's happening a lot around the country. And I don't know if Nick is on, but, he or anyone can speak to. I think this is something serious we need to address about because, again, they're worshiping this mechanical bull. And it's like they're giving all their energy to this mechanical bull. And I just want to know what you guys or what Nick think about that. Can we get something about this? Somebody can tell us what's happening and with this? It was very disturbing to me.
I can.
Oh, thank you, Pastor Jay.
You're welcome. Nick, are you on? Okay. First of all, phenomena that you're describing is just coming to the surface. It's nothing new. It actually started with Greek philosophy, Plato's Republic, and I'm not going into that and what that consists of. However, the bottom line is this: when you encounter the history of indigenous people, what you find is that indigenous people see the universe differently than does Europeans. Indigenous people see the universe as being something that is the source of their origin, and they also see the universe through the eyes of them, meaning that the human recognizes that it is the universe and the universe is it. They're part of each other. However, during the course of Plato's Republic, it pretty much shaped the philosophical / religious journey of Caucasians, and that is when you look at indigenous people, you see all kinds of symbols, and these symbols represent something. And during the Plato's Republic, with the development of this idea of the individual, it traded symbols for objects. And the difference between the symbol and the object is that the object becomes it becomes the source. Not the source. I'm sorry. It becomes the thing that the thinker or the philosopher or the religious person focus on. Like the cross is an object, and there is nothing more important than the cross. And what that does, in essence, is separates us from the universe and ties us to the earth. However, when we look at the cross from a spiritual perspective, and we see that the cross is actually speaking to the battle between righteousness and unrighteousness, good and evil, light and darkness. And it shows the depth of brutality that man would stoop to simply because he objectifies everything that is a symbol of sacredness. When we looked at Naaman last week, the Jordan River, from the if you look at it through the eyes of Plato or Caucasians with their religious symbols, you see filth. The river is nasty itself, and Naaman dipped in it, and his leprosy was gone. However, when you look at it through the eye of the universe, then what you actually see is not an object. You see a symbol. That symbol of that river is the filth that is in humanity that needs to be cleansed, and the one who is perpetuating that filth in the midst of humanity is the one who has leprosy, or the one who has this European philosophy about life and how life should be on this earth, and it speaks to them being having to come face to face with their lack of care for humanity in order for them to become one with the universe. And that cannot happen if they refuse to hear what those who are one with the universe says. For example, anyone who promotes disharmony in the universe, and we're looking for harmony, they are deficient in spirituality. They don't know what spirituality is. They're always in conflict with everything and everyone around them. And their thought processes are extremely limited, even though they think they're the smartest people on earth, because they look at intellect rather than spirituality. And what happens is you devolve to a state where you become so objectified with your thought patterns until you see these objects and you begin to submit to them. You begin to worship to the power of them, and they have no power. And this is no different. Worshiping the mechanical bull that you're talking about is no different than worshiping the cross in the Christian church, or is no different than worshiping Muhammad himself, as opposed to understanding that the submission is to who you are. You don't submit to an individual. You don't submit to a spiritual entity. You submit to who you are. And when you submit to who you are, then you begin to see the unicity that you have with the universe. And that is what changes the journey of humanity from one of selfishness, as Plato's Republic introduces to us, and it actually causes you to desire to be one with humanity, as opposed to being selfish and seeing everything as an object, including people. Thank you. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it did. And one of the things is the bull would come out like enraged, and then they had an African female to have like this light to come in front of the bull and would calm the bull down. And I'm not telling anybody to watch it, but I saw it on YouTube, and it's Commonwealth Games. But it's some serious stuff that they're doing. And my question to you, Pastor Jaden, are these people who are partaking in this ritual, will they be delusional, or I know they're going to have to give an account to that?
No. The only account they have to give in for that is what they encounter in this earth. That's it. First of all, they are searching for something, and the something that they are searching for is themselves, and they do have some kind of knowledge of what they're looking for, or some kind of inkling as to what's available. If they didn't, they would not have an African female to calm the bull. because the African female is actually one of the major symbols of the unicity of the universe with humanity. The raging bull itself is just the opposite of that. The raging bull is the one who objectifies everything. The raging bull is what creates havoc in the universe. The raging bull is what we are up against right now in terms of our efforts to bring harmony to the earth. The raging bull creates disharmony in the earth, in the midst of everyone on this earth except the raging bull itself and what it represents. The African woman is not a woman in terms of a female. It is feminine energy that calms everything, that brings everything back to order, because everything that is in terms of humanity came from that womb of that feminine energy. The feminine energy is nurturing, and the bull represents, and I just, if we look at it based upon our society right now, the bull represents an old, decrepit white man who runs the government, who runs business, and puts everybody in bondage, including his mama, if it gets in the way of his money. That's how I see the raging bull. But the common of that is the birth of righteousness into the earth, and that is what calms the bull, which is also a symbol. It is not a reality in terms of the object itself. The object doesn't matter. It's what it represents. It's what it symbolizes. And whether it be an African or a Native American, whether it be a Native American or a Japanese or a Chinese, all of the cultures have symbols. And these symbols have been deemed to be pagan based upon European thought. Does that help you?
It does. So what you just did was, and by us talking about this, you just transformed that energy that they were putting out there, I guess, for evilness or whatever. I don't know. You just transformed that into something positive, right?
Well, yes, voicing it does create transformation. If you look at the scriptures very carefully, what you find that's hidden but yet available is everything that's transformed is transformed by speech. And Elohim said, and the speech is a duality, and the duality of that speech is, and Elohim said, is one thing in the other realm. But in this earth consciousness, this earth realm, it takes the breath and the sound in order to give birth to a word. So when you speak, in terms of the things that we are discussing, a birth takes place, a transformation takes place because of the joining together of the sound and the spirit, because you cannot have sound without having spirit, breath. So the vocal cords produces the sound because of the spirit that flows through across them. And that is what brings about transformation, that duality in the earth realm. When we're in a state of meditating, we're talking about the universe hears all things. What's happening is, in our consciousness, when we are not speaking, what's happening is that our soul is speaking. Those are our thoughts. So we can have thought based upon our mind, and our mind deals with those things that we have encountered in the physical realm, and our mind sees them as objects simply because we have been indoctrinated with a European mindset. However, when we are meditating and our desire is to realize what it is to be one with the universe, then we're searching and speaking with our soul, because we are looking to understand the symbols that we are shown. And the symbols simply are being able to read the signs of the time. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's why it's important, I think, for us to bring things to the forefront with the family so we can transform things to, I'll just leave it right there. But I appreciate you doing that, because that really, it had my heart heavy. I know that there was nothing good gonna come out. I just didn't feel nothing good was gonna come out them doing that. But by us talking about it, like you said, we transformed it to light or whatever. But I hear you.
And keep in mind that everyone has a journey. Some journeys go through prison. Some journeys go through worshiping the bull. Some journeys go through worshiping the cross. Everyone has a journey. And that journey, if you are sincere to the journey, then you will find what you're looking for, and what you're looking for is in your mirror. I'm done. Unless there are questions or comments.
I do have my comment is, Evelyn, you say no good will come out of this conversation is the good that comes out of it. It maybe it was meant for you to see, to cause an agitation to prompt this discussion, to bring clarity to it. So I think the discussion is a lot more relevant than the act of them performing the ritual.
Good morning, this is Barbara. What you all have been talking about reminded me of the article I read in Bloomberg that related to what's happening with the woman, the feminine in society, and how the feminine is still the foundation for everything that happens, yet is the one who is not cherished, who's not valued, who's not provided with all of the acknowledgement of what it brings to mankind. So the bull also represents, and I think Nick talked about this one time. I mean, look at the symbol, as Pastor was saying, all white men who will do anything to prevent anything from getting in the way of its money. Well, the bull is the symbol for the stock market, the trade, Wall Street, if you will, which is the center of money. So the bull can represent to me also the God of this world, which is, I think, what Pastor was talking about. Anything that's apart from the Elohim that I am, the money is the God of this world. And the African woman represents the symbol of feminine energy. And until we get to the point where we are able to acknowledge the contribution and the balance of these energies, that's what that represented to me. To me, I guess, Evelyn, I did not see it as much of a negative as the fact that there is this energy, that stands in the gap, that prevents this raging selfishness, greed, from just taking over everything. So that's another way that I saw that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, everyone. Any other questions, comments? Let's see. Someone sent me a couple of questions, and I'm going to read them so we can discuss them, okay? Let me find it here. The first question reads, why is death and sacrifice considered honorable? And what is innate in us, especially for parents of those who sign up for the military to see things this way, to be in the military, especially for parents or those who will sign up for the military. So let me pull it all together. I'm sorry. Why is death and sacrifice considered to be honorable? And she's asking why the innate in us, especially for those that are parents or those who are signed up in military to see it as honorable. So that's the first question.
Good morning, everyone. And I hope I can answer this question. Based upon what Reverend Richard has stated, that I embrace that when we look at sacrifice, is it about what you will give up? Yes. Yet it's also about what you will inherit. So that's the balance of it. So it is an honorable thing in sacrifice and in death. I just think that's the yin and yang of it. Of when we look at sacrifice, you're going to have to give something up to gain something. So it's kind of like the yin and yang of life. And when I look at that as a part of an abundance and lack, do I need to give some concern to what I'm lacking in? Yeah. Yet I also need to be grateful for the abundance that I have. Be grateful that all the bills are paid, got $70 left over, and you got cable TV to watch what's happening now. That's my mama. That's something to be grateful for instead of complaining why I don't have this. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Appreciate your input. Anyone?
Go ahead. Anyone else?
I see it a little differently, and I see what George is saying, and I agree with that. I think though, from the perspective of the military, I see it a little differently, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. It from one of the things I read that during the Civil War, it was either 96 or 97% of the people that fought for the South were too poor to own slaves. They didn't own slaves, but they were talked into it because it was you're protecting your honor, you're protecting the legend of the South. And I see it from the military perspective as sort of the same thing. You are taught that you are to be the sacrifice, or it is an honorable thing to do this, and it is an honorable thing to protect your country. But it's also appears to me that is no different than the same mentality of the leadership that led the South in the Civil War. It is the brown people and the poor people who are to be honorable and who are to be sacrificed. And I don't know that is the energy behind her question, but that's the first thing that I saw, and I feel when I saw her question. So if that is not correct, then feel free to correct me. Thank you.
I agree with both of you. Is there anyone else who will speak to this?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. This is Sheldon. Yeah. As it relates to, I guess I'm going to speak on the military portion of it and following up with what Ron was talking about. But I also agree with what has been said about the parents. The military, in a sense, has worked, or works in a way, I should say, similar to that of how the church has been used, in that it gives a sense of identity and a worthy cause to live for. And in a sense, and definitely not saying that everyone does this, but I'm more so speaking. So I'm not speaking about any particular person, but more so speaking on the general concept and how it generally works. But the person who enlists in the military has a very, very strong belief and connection to the country or the entity for which that military is connected to, and then therefore the mission or the purpose or what that military represents, what it is trying to protect, and what it sees as being sacred and worthy of protecting and maintaining. In order to do that, the person who is enlisted in the military uh, needs to, or it's an attempt to make them to buy into that. So this idea of dying for your country or dying in the military is if that person is giving up and willing to give up their life and sacrifice for this greater cause. So they're, in a sense, willing to uh, give it all up for this cause that they believe in just that much. And it's something that has to be sold in the same way a politician just recently outwardly spoke out against the most recent student loan debts and saying, okay, how are we supposed to continue to attract those individuals who otherwise wouldn't be able to go to college if we're paying off their debts and they don't have to worry about paying for college anymore. So it's more so an idea that is so similar to how Pastor Richard was just talking about symbols earlier today. Is once someone or once anyone or any of us believe in an idea and see ourselves as connected to that idea or see ourselves through that idea, then there's a worthy cause to die for. Now, as it relates going back to the kids, that is what we just what I just explained just now, except you're willing to, in a sense, make a sacrifice for your child. But of course, this is an idea that you should agree with to some extent in terms of you birthed this child, help birth this child. This child was your seed to come into this earth, and that is a part of your identity in a sense. Um, so yeah, hopefully that can be seen clearly. But any other questions or comments? Yeah, I'm finished.
Anyone else? I agree with what has been said. I also see something in addition to that, and that is the whole idea of going into the military, especially culturally speaking, has more to do with having a job. Um, has more to do with being in a state of employment where you can retire and still be able to take care of yourself and your family. However, the byproduct of that is death or war. But the initial reason for it is not to give your life in war. As far as the military is concerned, when it comes to sacrificing life, you are not really. Once you are in the military, you go representing America, but when the bullets start flying, you are protecting the person next to you, and they are protecting you. That's the primary thing, that both of you survive. All of you come out of this battle or this war intact. Now, to speak to that spiritually, what Ron is talking about, the Civil War, and how 90-some plus % were two poor to own slaves, those same decrepit men who got all the money and all the control, who are in control right now, are the same ones who manipulated poor white people into going to war because they're white and they're fighting to maintain their status above the servitude of an African. Now let's look at the whole thing spiritually. When you look at the military, or when you look at sacrificing your life as being honorable, the sacrificing of a life being honorable is BS when it comes to war, because no soldier knows the reason he's going to war, especially in this country. And what kind of honor is it to sacrifice your life to go into Afghanistan and fight a people when those were not the people who attacked you? What's honorable about that? Yet, the propaganda tells us that it was an honorable sacrifice, to the extent that the parents are called Gold Star parents. All of this is a build-up to get poor people to become the cannon fodder for the country. Is it honorable to defend the country? Of course it is. That's not what I'm not taking away from that at all. When we look at this spiritually, what we see is that from the perspective of the military, the Civil War, etc., we are looking at objects. The objective is to maintain the status quo so we can maintain our wealth. The symbolism of it is, when you look at it symbolically, it symbolizes the war that has been created in the realm that has been created based upon those who seek to control everything on this earth, and those who are deficient in spirituality, those who have no sense of what spirituality is. All they see is what they want. Then, so the question becomes, why does the universe allow this type of conflict and self-interest to take place? Because in order for the human to exist, there has to be something that the human must bring into existence. What am I saying? If we are to be creators, as is Elohim who created us, then we have to have substance from which to create. And that substance from which we create is unrighteousness. It's selfishness. It's greed. It's hatred. It's racism. It's misogyny. All of these things are the substances of it. When we see it manifest in that way, that's the object, the object of which I speak. But that object symbolizes something. When we see racism manifest itself, what is that a symbol of? That is a symbol of greed, selfishness, etc. So I suppose in order to bring those two questions into one, what I'm actually saying, or very much attempting to say, is that sacrifice is honorable when you are making a sacrifice for humanity. Sacrifice is honorable when you're sacrificing for humanity. When you sacrifice for humanity and righteousness prevails, then you don't have to sacrifice for your child. You sacrifice for your child only because greed exists, only because of the color of your skin. And when we look at the student loan thing that Sheldon brought up, the sacrifices that were made for an education were signed on a piece of paper that put you in debt for the rest of your life. And that in itself is seen. That the objective of that, making you sign that paper, is to keep you in a state of struggle so that you will not be focused enough to see what's really going on. So I hope I'm not rambling. I hope this makes sense to you. If not, raise the question, make the comment. Please help me.
And in both arguments, though, whether you look at the rising cost of tuition or going back to the issue with the sacrifices in with the Army or armed services, it all stems from greed and racism. Great racism plays a role in every major decision that takes place in this country. So if you know, I think we've discussed this either on this line or maybe I was talking with Pastor or Kathy or somebody about it, but the rising cost of tuition, just too many minorities going to school, and you know, so everything that you see happens on a negative side has to do with either greed or racism, and that is something we, you know, continue to address.
Ron, I have a question. I want to make sure you guys are finished with discussing what you just brought to the family. Because I have something Pastor had said earlier. I have a question about.
Okay. You can go ahead, Evelyn. Even if we're not finished, we'll come back to it. Go ahead.
I never knew this, but Pastor had made a statement earlier that when we meditate, our soul, am I saying this right, Pastor Jay? You said our soul is being listened to, or I need clarity on that, please.
Okay. Well, what I was saying is that when we're in a state of meditation, it is our soul that's speaking, and it is our soul that attracts the light. When we are just in thought, then it is our mind, and our minds are focused on those things that we encounter or experience in the material world. Think about how in church the prayers are about what people want in this material world, more so than seeking the enlightenment so we can understand who we are. And that becomes a vicious circle because the material world is limited. However, the spiritual world is not limited. The material world is limited, and that's why you hear the same prayers. That's why you hear the same quote-unquote sermons over and over again, because they're looking at the objects and not understanding the symbols. So again, our soul is the source of speech during our meditation, the source of desire during our meditation. If you live a life of meditation, then you're constantly in that state, and you are in a position to dispel or quell those thoughts that comes to you that are not righteous thoughts, that are not positive thoughts, that are not enlightening thoughts. Does that make sense?
It does, and I'm gonna say this because a lot of times I cry in my heart. There are times that my heart is sad, and I don't cry. I don't cry physically sometimes because I want to keep that vibration up. Because when I start crying physically, it brings my vibration. It lowers my vibration. But there's a lot of times when I cry in my heart, and that's why when you mentioned that when we meditate, is what you just said. But yeah, I needed to hear that this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ron?
Thank you, Evelyn. I have a second question that someone texted me here. And I'm saying someone because the person didn't give me permission to use their name, so I'm going to kind of honor that right now. I don't think they were mine, but I didn't ask. So, okay. The second question I like, and this will, it says, what does it mean in death to be with the ancestors? And what's the difference between being with the ancestors and being in heaven? So, being with the ancestors, what are we saying there?
someone?
Well, this is Sheldon again. I'm not quite sure what they mean by being in heaven, whether they are saying being in heaven from a religious standpoint, which most of us traditionally believe, or I guess in a sense, the idea of what heaven uh, is actually supposed to represent. So that part has to be unpacked first. Um, the idea of being in heaven or hell is present now in this moment and always has been. This is not, or is not a physical place that you go to after you transition, after you are no longer a physical being. Um, as we were just talking about meditating just now, in a sense, you can experience heaven now and have done so, as well as we have all experienced hell when things seem to be completely chaotic, just a lot of trauma, drama, maybe fear, sadness, hate, and those things where it seems like our world and everything around us is crumbling and falling apart, and we're in the midst of it. Um, when we talk about being with the ancestors, we're not just talking about being with those who came before us, which is absolutely a part of it, but it is also being aware or feeling our presence amongst those who came before us. And in a sense, well, not in a sense, it is being in the midst of the Creator. Notice I didn't say that we were never in that place. I said feeling the presence of being there in a sense. So it's something that you're actually experiencing or and or aware of at that particular moment. It is also immediate or at the time access to uh, the, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding of the ancestors as well. Is as if you were with open communal with them, communicating with them, basking in a glory, if you will, and grace and peace and trying to figure out how to put all of this in words. And if you notice, the only thing I'm doing is really describing it, but can't as much say exactly what it is because it's some place or, and when I say place, I don't mean a physical place. Just like meditation is a place, that's what I mean by place, just to be clear on that. It is a place that is accessible to all of us. And not only is it accessible to us, it is a part of us. And so it even goes beyond of just being a right. A right is something that you're entitled to, whereas I'm saying this is a part of who and what we are. Um, last week, Pastor Richard mentioned experiencing his mother and being in the presence of her like he'd never been before or experienced. It is a presence that is beyond physical, but you feel and you know it's there, and you're communicating in a sense, but not even communicating from the intellect or communicating from the mind. It's as if you're communicating from the heart. So you're not hearing words, but you may hear yourself responding to, and it's just something that's automatically known within yourself. Um, I guess I mean I could go on forever trying to continue to explain the being in the presence of ancestors or being with ancestors, but that is what I am talking about. And then I guess one last thing before I finish. The idea of being with the ancestors is also being with a deeper part of yourself and realizing that there is no disconnect and there never was any disconnect from the ancestors. All of that is combined. All of that is actually connected.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was thinking more like pretty much what Sheldon is saying, but just like you're in, I guess when you pass on, you're in that space, be it that space of rest or whatever it is alongside of them or with them, versus being here in the physical now, experiencing those times
So,
when you feel them. If that makes sense.
yeah.
It does. One of the most difficult things for us to understand, for us to embrace, for us to talk about is exactly what we're talking about now. Because the presenter of the question, if you substitute ancestors for death, it's talking about the same thing. And that's something that, for some reason, we stay far away from. And the reason I think we do is because we try to describe it using adjectives, when the actual Western mindset uses adjectives to describe, the Eastern mindset uses verbs. Example, let's say, and I think I may have used this example before, I'm not sure. What is a lawnmower? In the Western mindset, well, you have two types of lawnmowers. You have one that's a push mower and one that's one you can ride. The one that you can ride has four wheels, and it has these things attached to it that you control it with. You ask the Eastern mindset, what is a lawnmower? It's a machine that cuts grass. It tells what it does as opposed to what it looks like. Does that make sense? Because I'm going.
Yes.
Can you see the difference? The simplicity of it. When we look at this from the Western mindset, we struggle. And we use words like going to heaven and shaking hands with Jesus. And while Jesus sits on the right hand of the Father, I'm going to see my great-grandmama, etc. Those are the things that are used to describe something that does not exist. The reality of ancestors is this. It is no different than the example that I used with the idea of the Spirit and being in the midst of the Spirit at all times. The glass of water that's in the ocean. And the glass represents your body, and the water represents the Spirit. There is more Spirit in that glass than it is glass surrounding it, which means that the essence of your being is far greater than what your body is. And when we look at it that way, when someone transitions, it's like shedding that glass. The whole time, when they transition, they shed the glass, they become one with the ocean again. However, when I talk about experiencing the presence greater than I've ever done it before in terms of my mom transitioning, then the water in that glass is my spirit. I'm the glass of my body. And because the ocean is constantly moving, because it is always there, I'm able to feel the presence of the ocean, but I'm so focused on the physical world or the material world until I ignore it, or I say it's a coincidence. Or I say things like, that's in my mind, that there's no such thing as ancestral visitations. Yet, if you look at the ancestors being the ocean, yes, it is. Now, how is it that I can feel the presence of my mom? Is because the same energy that she has, I am familiar with, and she's familiar with my energy. And that's the presence that I am experiencing. And there is a very, very slim difference between, well, let me put it this way. When we talk about the ancestors, at some point we will have to talk about the human versus in relationship to Elohim. I'll do that in a few moments. So, but first of all, do you understand what I'm trying to say about the ancestors? And that's for Rika or anyone else. Do you? Does it make sense? Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Because heaven doesn't exist in the state that is described in religion. Enlightenment is what heaven is, being enlightened. And
Okay, Pastor. So I'm trying to understand. So when we thinking about the ancestors, we here in the physical, we have that ability to be in their presence.
yes,
in the physical as we do in death, except we have that glass, which is here, we physically here on earth, versus now you've transitioned, you're in the spiritual. Am I making sense? Or am I understanding?
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. What it just triggered me when what Pastor was saying is that we are used to more so being acclimated with our physical body. When he was speaking on the present with his mother, which we all can do, he was in touch or in tap or aware or conscious of or at that moment, which he always was, of his spiritual self, and it was his spiritual self who was in constant or then in communication with his mother. So the reason why some people don't feel this when someone passes is only because, and they may do it only for a slither, but not much. It depends on how open they are to experiencing their spiritual self, being aware of it, kind of like in the sense of being aware of what traditionally in the church would be called that what we consider as being God, and that very, very soft voice is kind of the same thing. So from that standpoint, even though his mother had left, he wasn't in with her like physical to spiritual. He was aware and walking in the spirit while being physical and still communicating and feeling the presence of his mother from that standpoint, and knowing that she was there and feeling her presence from a spiritual standpoint. We can do this in the same way where I'm sure you've had your husband, maybe your mother or one of your kids to go somewhere, and you in a sense can feel their presence even though over 100 miles or whatever away. You transcended the physical at that particular moment and been with them, and that is just as real. Actually, is even more real. But that is who you are, and that's who you always were.
And that's just having that ability to understand and be able to go into that physical realm. In the physical body, I guess. Yeah. Spiritual realm into the physical body.
And feeling, right?
Yes.
My mama was in a glass. I'm in a glass. So because we're so in tune to this physical world, it impedes the depth of our experience with each other because the glasses bump each other. When we become more spiritually inclined, then we're able to experience the energy in a more profound way. But one of those glasses are gone, and that body separates from that spirit of that water, then it becomes totally energy, and that total energy is attracted to familiar energy, and that is why I have a stronger feeling, because there's nothing to separate us from each other. Does that make sense?
Yes.
May I share something, please?
Yeah.
When my mom transitioned, I cried. But then there, after they transition, you have some moments where you miss them. And I started crying again. And I heard my mom say, "Why are you crying? You're me." And at that time, my tears dried up and everything. And I don't think I've cried since because I carry that with me. That's my reminder. I am my mom. I am my ancestors. I just want to share that.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
And I get. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
I want to piggyback on what Evelyn said. Because when we look at what the Aramaic word, which means heaven, it speaks of enlightenment, as Pastor's already said. It's about enlightenment. It's about a vibration, the vibration of the universe. And we are all connected with that vibration, that same vibration. And it doesn't matter what form we shift into, whether it's a physical form or whether it's a different form. That doesn't change the connectedness of that vibration, that oneness, that unicity. And so when Evelyn says, her mom said, "I'm you and you're me," it's the same as our saying, I am Elohim and Elohim is me. That it's that sacred connection, that sacred vibration, that universal vibration that we all have that transcends what we call death, which is simply, as Pastor tried to show it, the thing that contains the essence or the vibration or the spirit of who we really are. Well, we can pour that water from one shape into another shape, one shape of glass into another shape of glass. That doesn't change the essence of what fills the glass. And even when that glass shatters, and that water is misted upward, or it becomes a mist, and it joins again with other molecules of water, it doesn't change the vibration, the essence. And that's what the ancestors are. That's what we talk about. We talk about our ancestors, that connectedness, and we might think of ancestors as just our mothers and fathers. It goes very much beyond that. It's much larger than that. It's all of those who are one with us and we with them, who've gone on before. But what we can capture, and not necessarily capture, but access what they have provided from a spiritual perspective. If it relates to peace, if it relates to joy, if it relates to whatever it is that speaks to us, and I don't mean through our physical ear, but through our heart. That's the vibration that continues. It never stops. It never stops, and it will continue on for our children when we change into a different form. In other words, we are released from these physical bodies. So that's the thing that keeps me enthralled and hopeful. The fact that it goes on and on and on, doesn't stop, and that's the beauty of being able to relate to, quote unquote, the ancestors. They were there they were before us, but they are in front of us in terms of, if we try to put it in time, they're always there. I don't know how else to say that. So thank you.
Yes, and Barbara, and you speaking about, the ancestors and speaking in reference to, our beginning, there was a study that was done on the ancestral math and time. And they say that some generations last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. But it was saying that if you look at 20 generations, we have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great grandparents, and then it goes on all the way up to the 18th great grandparents generation. We have 1,048,576 ancestors. So when you talk about, the beginning, or we look at it in terms of math and time, this is how awesome and great, our ancestors were, to be able to calculate or be able to have, the DNA, just to be able to look at the factual aspects of that. So I just wanted to just share that, because I was just, doing a little reading on ancestors, and just to know that the DNA, that we can go back to the 18th great grandparents, and to know that, we were never alone. That was always in us, with us, and for us, and to us. So I just wanted to share that thought. It was just interesting. I'm done.
Thank you, George. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, I'm saying, unless there was any questions, it was just, a question about how many ancestors do we have. But just looking at this particular ancestral math and time, it was just sharing some information over the generations. I'm done, Brown. I'm done.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I had to say. You guys have already. I was just going to use Abraham as an example when they talk about going to be with your fathers. We take that literally and think it means the Johnsons or the Richards or the whatever family tree you have, and it's much more than that, as has been said. In that case, looking at Abraham, it was Abraham that was called out. So you're talking about looking at that culture, looking at that group of people, looking at those who have been separated for that purpose. So when same thing with us, and you look at ancestors, we are part of a culture. We are part of a truth, a search for truth that is separated, and that separation is from religion and everything else that is not real or is not connected to the universe. So just kind of agreeing with what is said, the ancestors is a timeless thing, and I even see that death may even be a way of enhancing that vibration, because that person that is released is no longer tied to all the stuff that comes with your humanity. And so the vibrations that you are now able to leave in the earth or send back to the earth, however you want to look at that, for the next generation, are more, give them opportunity to be in rhythm probably a lot sooner than the previous generation. So if we keep going the way we're going with this, perhaps the next generation and the next generation will have an easier time of feeling that unique oneness with the universe and feeling the rhythm that we're describing now. So I just want to say that and just disagree with what's been said.
Are there any other questions about that? Because I want to reiterate something if there are not. during the discussion about ancestors, because of a question that was sent to me, and I actually overlooked it, and I apologize for that. There needs to be, or there is a request rather, for clarity on what it means to be a human. It is impossible to be human and not embrace the reality of being Elohim, because Elohim created us in its image, and then it put us in this body or in bodily form, which means that Elohim is having a physical experience. How do you become human? Simply because you exit the womb does not mean that you are human. In order to be human, in order for Elohim to have this truly earthly experience, the principles, loving kindness, forgiveness, mercy, etc., has to be the pathway that is embraced, that is followed. There has to be within you a sense of spiritual consciousness that seeks to end any conflict that results in adversity towards humanity or the earth itself, which means that our mindset must be as the mindset of the one who created us. And that the human has those attributes. It doesn't mean that the human does not revert at times to the animalistic attitude or the animalistic beliefs or thoughts, because that's what it has been steeped in through education and experience. Those who are seeking to understand and embracing the reality of the spiritual, regardless of what they have been told in the past, and without regard to how people feel about them, those are humans. Those who seek the material world and see everything in Scripture literally as and materially or animalistic in thought. And what happens is those with animalistic thought prey on those who are looking to a Jesus that's in the Bible that does not exist spiritually. A Jesus that the Bible talks about that they have been told is this man who's going to come back. When if this Jesus is going to come back, then why is it that the Scripture does not say back, that it was added? So what I'm saying in essence is this. We have had animalistic attitudes for most of our lives, and now we are engaging in a quest for spiritual understanding. And what this quest for spiritual understanding has shown us is that there is truly a difference between the animalistic attitude and that of the human. That of the animal does not, it sees Elohim as something separate from it. It sees, quote unquote, God as something or an entity that is beyond it, and it gives them the space to make excuses for everything that they do wrong, because even though this God that they talk about that's separate from them is supposed to be more powerful than anything, the devil is able to come in and wreak havoc in their lives, even though they belong to this God that's so powerful. That's how that is a thought pattern of an animalistic attitude seeking religious justification for what it does, and seeking to find some sense of solace or some sense of emotional stability in that. Now, you say, well, what about those who truly believe? The ones who, people who are truly going to church, they truly believe, they are really, really searching for this, they do find rest and peace in what's in those scriptures. Not because they necessarily understand them, but because the depth of their desire is greater than the depth of the desire or than those who are perpetuating this. And that desire is shown by their efforts to live according to those principles of loving kindness, forgiveness, and mercy, etc. Those who are faking the funk are those who say that they believe this, yet they are engaged in other activities that does not mimic anything that the Scripture teaches in regards to the teachings of Jesus. Does that make sense? If there are questions, please raise them.
Well, Pastor, we're born human. So till we come into that mindset and understanding, and we eat, sleep, and breathe and believe and know that we are Elohim, we remain human.
Okay.
And some of us die human if we don't get there in that mindset.
What happens is, okay, Thomas Hobbes, a philosopher, believes that we're born with a blank slate, and the impressions that we go through in life is what determines who we are and our personality, etc. I don't believe that. I believe that every child that comes into this world has the propensity to remain, to be a human in this world. And that is seen by the innocence of that child. The playmates they have that you can't see. The things that they feel that you don't experience. The affinity that it has for a parent, even though that parent is abusive. What changes that child? The thing that changes that child are the attitudes of those within that child's environment. When we came into this earth, every one of us who were engaged in church activities were taken there by our parents. And if you really think about it, the only reason you're Baptist or Methodist is that's what your parents were, unless you decided to change when you got older. When we look at it from that perspective, what do we see? When we look at it from that perspective, we see that we have been trained to disbelieve that we can see into the other realm and we can experience our emotions and the emotions of others in the other realm. These children who are playing with invisible friends, we talk them out of it by telling them it does not exist. We do not cultivate the idea of meditation. We cultivate the idea of praying, to use the audible words, to pray to a God who has told us that it is our responsibility to change things in this earth realm by saying, you are to dominate the earth consciousness. So what I see in this is that we can change that. I see it in excuse me, in my three grandboys. I see it. They meditate, and they don't have to be told to do it. There are times when they get agitated, and they meditate and come back calm. What they do, they will request that someone burn some sage for them. All of these things are embedded in them. Why? Because no one has made any effort to take from them their spiritual connection, their spiritual origin, their spiritual beliefs. However, because of the environment we were reared in and the environment that continues to function, there are things that seep into their minds and that causes them to attach to this material world. And our desires are to keep them so aware of who they are spiritually until the material world has no control over them and it does not dictate their journey. we in this earth realm are obligated to look at the stones that were left by the pathway, so we will know that our ancestors passed this way. Meaning that it is the Western mentality that has actually stripped us of our affinity, the depth of our affinity for spirituality, because the desire for spirituality is always there, and everyone recognizes the most spiritual people on this earth are Africans. And regardless of how that has, the effort that has been engaged in to strip us of that, the reason that it is impossible to do that is because our essence is spiritual. This is not something that was added to us. This is who we are, and we don't have an affinity for spirituality. We are not deficient in that area. We are spiritual, and that doesn't. And what that means is we don't need to acquire a sense of spirituality. We don't need to be taught to be spiritual. We are that, and the ones who are not spiritual are the ones who have stripped us of that, and the Creator allowed that to be so that we could be as Elohim is, and that is bringing into existence a spiritual nature that mimics that of Elohim. So bottom line is this: just like Elohim created us in his image and put us in a body, it is our responsibility to take that inkling of spirituality, that small amount of melanin, and expand it through spiritual thought, through nurturing, through loving kindness, and so that the mindset will be altered from that mindset that is constantly adverse to the universe and its energy, that is constantly out of rhythm with the universe. As a matter of fact, the Eastern understanding of sin is someone who is out of rhythm with the universe, in addition to those being caught up in something. You're so caught up into something until your rhythm with the universe has been altered, diminished, or doesn't exist in regards to your thought patterns. Our responsibility is to raise the vibrations in this earth to the extent that it is irresistible, that you are open, you feel it, you experience it. You may not know what you're experiencing, but it begins to change your mentality because it shows you a picture of your deficiencies as well as a picture of what our righteousness looks like in terms of how you treat everyone. But more, just as important rather, is how you treat the earth itself. I know I said a lot. However, if there are questions or comments or something I said you didn't understand or misspoken, please feel free at this moment. Thank you. Question.
I think,
Go ahead, Ron.
well, I was just going to say that I think two very important questions out of all we've discussed today, which was all of it awesome, but the two questions that really stick out to me is the question about the ancestors and the questions about what it means to be human. I think people, whoever asked the questions for and the discussion, because it not only brings enlightenment to the universe and those who are seeking the same type of truth, it also further enlightens us to have these discussions. So I think those are things that we've talked about a lot, at least over the last year or two, and it brings me joy to talk about them and hopefully bring some clarity. So again, I asked Pastor's question: are there any questions? Is that his explanation clear to you? If not, please just let us know. We'll keep going with this.
It's very clear. Total breakdown on that, Pastor, because I think that was we're born into the human body, but that spiritual mindset is there. And it's until that's shifted is when the animalistic portion starts to taint that spirituality. Is that correct? And that's where we need to.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
If I could add to that as well, piggybacking what Pastor Richard was saying, as it relates to the intellect and the physical and the Creator experiencing itself. So we are absolutely, as we discussed, and I believe at least everyone who's been on here regularly understands a little bit more now, at least, of the idea of Elohim and us being, in a sense, a portion of the Creator in the same way we were talking about earlier, being connected to the ancestors. Well, the Creator, as it does in creating, and then probably you're wondering, okay, if God created everything and we already created, how do we then also continue to create if everything is already created? So what the Creator did was the Creator, in a sense, divided itself, even though it was still connected. We talk about the five senses. We talk about the six, seven, eight sense. We talk about the intellect. As we come into this physical body, we have experience, we have joy, we are creating that particular, we are creating all of that. We're creating our life as we go. Us creating our life as we go in the same way or simultaneously is the Creator experiencing itself as well in a different and a new way. That's how we are connected. It relates to the five senses which are only used or a creation in a sense of this earth and the creation of this physical body allows us then to observe and discover and be in awe the physical creation. But we experience that awe, you notice, through higher senses that are actually spiritual. So any particular thing, any physical thing, no matter what it is, any experience that we have, we can go deeper and deeper and deeper into that particular thing infinitely. So what I mean by that is the joy of, for example, someone who is an artist, someone who is a music in music, even into doing something as simple as driving. You think about the idea of martial arts and karate. We can go further and further and further and see more and more and more in that particular thing as we point our attention and focus on that particular thing. And that in itself is creation that we are a part of, and that I don't say we're responsible of, but we are definitely behind. Think about whatever it is, the most beautiful thing, but it could also be the most simplest thing in the world to you, which might be, let's just say, for example, and I think I use this often, a flower. One can admire and find awe in a flower and keep on noticing and appreciating a flower more and more and more and noticing little small details and things of that nature. That is creation. When we talk, when Pastor Richard mentioned earlier about the kids and the kids just playing and being joyous, etc., that is the Creator, or in that the Creator is experiencing itself with joy at that particular moment. When we do anything, when we could commune with family, stuff on the spiritual level is us actually experiencing and creating at the same exact time. And it is the only from the intellect standpoint that we can understand the physical world and then have the opportunity to have an appreciation for it. Now, we mentioned, I think it was mentioned earlier today, as well as maybe a week or two ago, about the idea of, I'm going to use the wrong word, but y'all know what I'm talking about. The idea of taming the earth or controlling the earth. I forget the exact word that was being used that was translated wrong, more so coming directly out of the Bible. The idea of taming or automatically controlling from that standpoint and ruling over is to then also not have or be able to see the awe or the openness of a particular thing. Because in order to really see or appreciate something, to see something new, means to not to control it necessarily, and in a sense let it flourish or reveal itself in our presence and in front of us. That's what we do when we truly love something or someone. We allow that particular thing to reveal itself and open up more and more and more, and we begin to see more and more and more. But of course, that comes with respect and reverence of that particular thing. That automatically is tied and automatically happens with the idea of being able to see the creator in everything or realizing that everything is the creator. That helps to open that up, to open us up for those particular experiences. Um, when we first started, Pastor Richard mentioned, I remember him responding to Evelyn saying that those people who were talking about mechanical bulls, in a sense, struggle, just here on Earth. Earth is more so experiencing, creating, and learning. And when we talked about that ancestor of worship, we too are ancestors in a sense. When we go to or in touch with our spiritual realm, we are that which we're also in a sense enjoying the company of and joining. All of that is available, not just available. That is everyone. It literally is everyone. Now, it's just a difference between, and even ourselves have maybe been blind or very distant and not focusing or aware of that at times, but that is always there. And I say that to say that in the bigger scheme of things, ultimately, the universe, the creator, is always a fan, a champion of us, and always taking care of us. When Pastor Richard said that will only affect them essentially in this realm now, that is all it affects. But like I said, that is part of the growth for that entity or all of us to become more aware and to experience more of the physical. But to be here in the physical is a gift, and to enjoy is just a matter of how we do it. And again, with that wisdom and knowledge, as Pastor Richard and Ms. Barbara mentioned earlier, that is heaven. And all of us have experienced it at times in this physical existence. I'm done at the moment.
Sheldon, it's wrong. I'm gonna back you up a little bit because Pastor and Barbara said this as you mentioned, but you put it in a different way, and it I like the way you said it. uh, talk about that thing again. You said we are ancestors too. Talk about that thing again that makes the human an ancestor, because that was one of the things I was trying to say when I talked about Abraham. That little thing in us that transcends time as the human, and kind of ties everything together.
Yeah. So what I meant by that, and we're definitely going further and further and further away from what we taught and what we traditionally believe from a religious standpoint. And Nick and I mentioned it before. We, our spiritual parts of ourselves, when we think about the Holy Spirit and we think about wisdom, and it breaks down. The Kimmer is from the Greek, Aramaic, but Sophia, and that thing that we call the Holy Spirit in church that guides us is us. And so there is the aspect of us that knows that we are not necessarily uh, uh, conscious of in our everyday life. That has always been there, will always be there, um, and it helps to guide us. In a sense, it's like, to put in words, the greater aspects of who we are. There is no disconnect from us and the Creator and us being Elohim. So now, with that being said, we even do this all the times for ourselves. For example, when we ourselves go to sleep, or maybe day dreaming, when we're asleep at night, our dreams are simply another reality. And those, some that we don't even remember, kind of like what may seem when we're talking about from a physical standpoint, adventures in our dreams, we too are ancestors helping our selves as well as helping others. But they come off because we're no longer just in the physical world, in a sense, as different things that we may not just remember, maybe glimpses of it, but not necessarily understanding. So one time, for example, a long time ago, wasn't too long ago, I recall having a dream, and in the dream there was some what just was an individual, some guy who came and was actually trying to rob me, and I was aware I was having a dream, but I also was aware that I was controlling the dream. So it's like I was aware of the dream and the physical. So it was like I was in my right frame of mind. I realized what I was doing. So at first, I was a little nervous, but then I basically told the guy, it was like no, but I just had a lot of love and compassion for him, and it was me communicating to him that no, you can't do this, or you, more so, you don't want to do this. Not that I wasn't allowing him to do it, but I could feel myself speaking to the deeper spiritual, soulful part of himself and making that particular connection. And in a sense, like waking him up. And then I realized upon waking, I didn't, because at the time I didn't know it, but I realized upon waking that in some sense, not to say that I was actually out there trying to, in this physical sense, rob someone, but maybe my ideas about someone, or seeing people separate in some way, I understood that I was, in a sense, speaking to myself. And those types of things happen all the time, where we, in a sense, are guiding ourselves as well. we are protecting ourselves as well. We are protecting all of each other as well. Because what I said, we are not only amongst the ancestors, we are the ancestors. No one on this phone just came into existence. I don't think anyone over here is over 100 Earth years old. So no one on this phone just came into existence within the last 100 years.
Question. When you talk about us being the ancestor, I see that more as us being one with, which means the same as.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of that came to me is when those of you who saw the movie Black Panther, is when he went to the ancestors to get an understanding of some things that had happened prior to him becoming the king. That scene spoke to me, and what it said to me is that our soul is one with quote-unquote ancestor. We have seen our soul as belonging to God, but our soul is the essence of our ancestry oneness. It is the bridge for more clarity, hopefully, that keeps us connected with the ancestors. What we have done, we've not destroyed the bridge. We have not erased the connection. We have lost our affinity for the connection, because when you're dead, you're in heaven, and your body is gone back to the dust. There is no more existence of you other than you're in heaven, and you will not have any other contact with this earth until Jesus comes back and raises you from the dead. That has overshadowed the unicity that we have with the ancestors. And when we talk about something came to me, what did it come from? It came from the depth of your soul by way of the ancestors, meaning that there is a ebb and flow between the two. It's like there is no separation between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. The names is what separate, as opposed to a landmass that separates the two. The whole idea of being the ancestor, being one with the ancestor, is as I see it, is simply saying that the life force of energy is always present with us, whether we are in the body or not, and that in itself gives us that perspective of ancestry unicity. Does that make sense?
It makes plenty of sense. We all have always been connected, and with all of us being connected and impossible for us to separate on the ancestor realm, we all have created or have had every experience have acquired wisdom and knowledge collectively, in terms of you thinking about it. Like, if we think about it as a physical person, we're adding on to that now. Well, because we all did this together and we're part of it, that means that we automatically have access to all of it. So everything that Pastor Richard has ever read or studied, everything that George has ever read and studied, on an ancestor realm, from a spiritual standpoint, we all have access to that. And that is why when we read sometimes things, or we hear things, or in the present, it resonates so strongly. Now, one last thing, when you mentioned the idea about kind of cutting ourselves off from it, it's not that we were and you're not saying this, I'm just making sure that everyone knows. I know you're not saying this though. It's not that, and I might be repeating it wrong as you said it. not cutting ourselves off, but by seeing ourselves separate or seeing that person over there or not reverencing or thinking much of the people in a sense who came before us, then we automatically separate ourselves from being able to tap in, or we put a wall, or the same way where somebody might lie to themselves and try to ignore something. It's like we ignore that our connection and all that we have access to. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's not that it's true. In a sense, we lie to ourselves about it.
Um, the the idea of connection, right? The idea of having access. These are Western thoughts. This is objectifying everything. This is when we say connected to access, it's another way of saying, without us really thinking about it, is that we are separate from it, or we have opportunity to separate from it. The Eastern thought is we are the universe is us. We are the ancestors is us. We are one with everything. There is no sense of connecting to, because that tree that I'm looking at is me and I am it. We can communicate because of that. Our thought, the way we think, is extremely difficult to change because of the depth of indoctrination with Western thought that we've had. We have never been taught in school anything other than how to think, as did the Greeks, as did the Romans, as did Europeans, period. That's how we have been taught to think. The struggle that we are having at this moment with using words like access and connected, the struggle is because generation after generation is indoctrinated with the same thought pattern. Therefore, you don't have to do it anymore because we are constantly, we are locked into that thought pattern. However, when we started this journey, we began to see you're not locked into it. And I'll give you an example. The whole reason that there is an effort to remove the history of the African from libraries and from the school, to remove the literature of the African from the library and the schools, is because by the third generation, they would be non-existent in the mindset of the people of Africans. And that effort is not going to succeed, but that is the reason that is being done. However, that mindset is impossible to erase because we are that mindset. That is our essence. And what has taken place is the principle of erasing our existence from the written page has had the reverse effect because there are more books being sold on Amazon about the African than ever before, and they are being ordered by Caucasians, by people of Western thought. What does that mean? When we began to read and understand African Genesis, when we began to understand spirituality before religion, when we look at the writings from the East in relationship to the Western thought that grew out of Greek philosophy, what we are beginning to see is that the mindset is being changed, but it's not. It's being changed from the European mindset to that of the Eastern mindset, and there are those who will say, well, what's wrong with the Western mindset? Well, the Western mindset has destroyed everything it puts its hand on. The Western mindset is the mindset of unrightness. The Western mindset is destructive, greedy, and mean, hateful, and everything else that you can think of. The Eastern mindset is quite the contrary. There were no real battles. There was no battles at all in Palestine, what's now called Israel. There were no battles there at all until the Caucasians took that land in 1948. That's when the battle started. Prior to that, regardless of what you believe, you live next door to your neighbors, and neighbors treated each other as they treated themselves. So those who want to raise that question about the European mindset is because it is damning and damaging, and it is the mindset. It is the source of substance that we are here to bring to the place of unicity with the universe, because that mindset of Europe separates itself from everything, and that is why it does not have any compassion when it destroys everything, like the rainforest, or when it's destroying the ozone layer. Have nothing, do not care that 50 years from now their grandkids or great-grands will be dead or not able to live on this earth. They know that it's possible, but we are in the gap to keep it from happening because of that Eastern mindset that we are being reintroduced to, that we are embracing, that we are bringing from the depths of our soul, as opposed to depending on our mind, the thoughts of our mind, to guide us along this way. I'm done. And we may have been on the phone too long. I don't know. And I know a lot has been said today. So if there are questions or comments, fine. If they're not, if you have them tomorrow, Monday, it doesn't matter. I'm done. Right.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. And we're approaching 2 hours. It's 11:52, which is a good time. And you're right. A lot has been said. I hope all of the questions have been answered to the inquirer's satisfaction. If not, we'll do that again tomorrow. But this is a good place to stop for today. And if no more questions or comments, we will resume tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. And I hope everyone has a great Saturday. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thank you.